Hi, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to my weekly podcast about spirituality, love, death, devotion, and waking up while living in a messy world. The Satsang with Shambhavi podcast is recorded live each week with students of our nonprofit community, Jayakula. For more information and to find out about attending a satsang, visit jayakula.org. Thanks for listening. Much love to you, wherever and however you are. There is, according to the view of this tradition and other traditions, only one self here. That means that all of reality is one subjectivity. And one of the most wonderful things about that, which is something that is not a concept or an idea that you have to believe in or subscribe to. You're perfectly invited to doubt that as much as you like. But the truth of the matter is that if you continue to practice over a long period of time, you will recognize that for yourself, and then there will be no belief required. But in Western rationalism, Western scientific thinking, Western philosophy, in general, with some few exceptions, the nature of reality is said to be objective. In other words, it exists in and of itself. There is sort of something that doesn't have any awareness or any subjectivity that exists. And there's a kind of idea that this is the real reality, this objective reality, and that if we could see things as they really are objectively, we would all see the same thing. And that the only reason we see things differently is because our view is limited by our subjectivity, is limited by the veil of consciousness through which we see everything. This is a Western point of view, that there's something out there that's real, but we're looking at it through the sunglasses of our subjectivity, and so we're distorting it. And everyone's distorting it slightly differently. And there's been, at different times in Western philosophy, this urge or longing or determination to figure out how to be more objective or see things more objectively. In our traditions, it's exactly the opposite. Everything is a subjectivity. Everything has self-awareness. Everything is filled with consciousness. And objectivity is just a concept that is being created by that subjectivity. It's just one of its games. Oh, those funny people think there's something outside of me. Let's play with that form of life and see what that looks like. So it's the exact reverse. And within that subjectivity, which is filling all of existence, which is the base of existence itself, there are many, many stories being told, many games being played, many self-amusements. And this alive aware reality, or Lord Shiva, is sometimes called a magician or an artist. And like an artist, this alive aware reality is creating these different forms and experiences. And like a magician, they have a kind of a magical quality. So in order to create form, or in order to create a circumstance, we have to limit it in some way. You've heard me talk about this before, that if you want to paint something, you can't paint it out of all colors. If you want to make a piece of music, you can't make it out of all notes. If you want to make a person, you can't make it out of all matter in all of existence. In any of these instances, if you did that, you would just end up with a blob, a featureless blob of some sort.
Or God.
Or God, yeah, right. But the idea is that out of the ocean of consciousness are being created these individualized styles, waves. Each of these waves is made of ocean, is made of that consciousness, but looks different from every other one. And the idea is that in order to create all of these worlds and experiences for the purpose of enjoyment and self-expression, there has to be the power to self-limit, to have this experience of limiting oneself. Even though the base state of reality is unlimited consciousness, unlimited awareness, creativity, wisdom, within that are being created limited forms. You might have a dream that you're limited in some way, but when you wake up, you discover you're not limited. And, what a relief. You have a dream you're being chased by something, and you're scared, right? And then you wake up and you realize, that was just a dream. and you feel good. And maybe you even feel curious about the dream. Whoa, what was that dream about? So this is kind of like this alive aware reality is also experiencing out of its own creativity these appearances of limitations and then enjoying it when the full nature of the self is revealed. So as we are doing sadhana, we are kind of playing that game of self-revelation. We are little wavelets of the Lord in search of the ocean. And when we find the ocean and when we realize we were ocean all along, there's this feeling of joy and celebration. And this is the game that's being played. So self-revelation, it's not the base state of reality, because even in its activity of self-limiting, there is no experience of absolute limitation. And that you can understand this very easily. If I'm playing a part in a drama or a movie or something, and I'm playing the part of someone who has some limitation, I'm playing that part with full awareness that I don't have that limitation, right? I mean, if I'm playing someone who's an amputee, been in a war and had one of their legs amputated, as I'm playing that part in the movies, I'm not thinking, oh my God, I don't have a leg. Right? I'm thinking, oh my God, I wonder how they're doing that with the green screen and like CGI and making it look like I don't have a leg. Cool. Can't wait to see the production when it's done. Right? So just as we have fun playing with some limitations, not with all of them, so is Lord Shiva having a good rollicking old time playing all these parts we call ourself. And then kind of, having that experience of self-revelation, which we call waking up, is really just part of the game. And it's the most interesting part of the game, I think. I mean, you may disagree with me, but to discover that you have more capacity and you have more creativity and more playfulness, and you don't need to worry so much, and that you can do a lot more than you thought you could do. Seems like a very good game to me. A better game than some other games I could think of that people are playing here. Basically, it's a thrill ride of self-revelation, just reenacting that in different ways and experiencing that joy, just like waking up from a dream. And it's really a form of self-expression, the game that's being played here, that limited beings have this possibility to reconnect, re-remember what they are really all about, and that there's a great deal of joy connected with that experience. And this is why I encourage everybody not to get so earnest and exercised about everything to do with your spiritual life, because we're really just that subjectivity playing this game for enjoyment. And even our drama is enjoyable, which we already know, if we're being totally honest with ourselves. That all the emotional drama we go through and our earnestness and our worrying is like part of the texture that we create in our lives that creates interest, some kind of interest for us. So we're attached to it. But ultimately, that isn't really necessary to have a super fun time. So I encourage everyone to not be too earnest about what you're doing, to look and see what it is that's really pulling you toward doing any kind of practice, and recognize it's like really a thrill ride. It's kind of an amusement park ride. Being in a community, working with a teacher. I mean, my own personal experience, regardless of how good or bad my teachers have been, is that it's just the most interesting thing working with a teacher. We're not doing it because it's like, everyone must do this. It's just really, really fun if you get into it. And part of the reason it's fun for me is that it engages so much of me. And I really don't like to have fallow parts of myself. I don't like to be unused. I don't like to not be using all of myself. I've never liked that. Even decades before I had a spiritual practice, I had this frustration when I wasn't able to fully express myself, which I already knew was not only because of my external environment. I already knew there was like things inside of me that were keeping me from fully expressing myself. But the idea that one could participate in this like really wholehearted, full-on way was always what I wanted. And as far as I'm concerned, spiritual life and working with a teacher and being in a community is what calls all that out of us. If we choose to answer, because obviously not everyone here is being full-on, but that's just the way things are. I'm just expressing how I feel about it. I would like people to play much harder, much wilder. There's a lot of fragility in lots of different people for lots of different reasons, but people aren't playing very hard by and large because there's a lot of fear and earnestness about it all.
What would it look like if people were playing harder or more engaged in this way that you're talking about?
They would be much less careful about what they say. They'd be much less worried about what they ask and if it sounded smart or if it seemed important. They'd be much more demanding. They would be much more forthcoming about their spiritual practice and what they're actually doing and what's actually happening. They would demand a lot more from me in lots of different ways and be more open and forthcoming with each other and be determined to give what you have to give and be as free as you can possibly be no matter what anybody else is doing. So I think part of the lack of hard playing is that people are too concerned with what other people think, number one, or how other people are going to think of them. And there's all kinds of projection going on about that. And we have a lot of new people who haven't met us at all in person or only met us once or something like that. And there's a lot of projection going on about who we are and what's happening here. I don't mean, it's not bad projection. It's not like anyone's thinking, oh, these people, there's something wrong with them. On the contrary, it's like people are being sanctified. Everyone here is very far along on their spiritual path, and no one here is having the problems I'm having, and no one here has ever had issues with substance abuse, and blah, blah, blah. Like, it just goes on and on. I hear these things in office hours. I'm like, who do you think is here? And I think part of this, no one ever had a hard childhood but me.
Oh, wow.
Whatever. Some of this is due to not knowing the community, not having met us in person, and not having a chance to just hang out and hear people's experiences and get to know people in a different way. But I keep trying to say, we're just a collection of people, and we have all the stuff that any collection of people would have, but there's just some people out there not believing me. So anyway, there would be much less of that kind of thing going on. One of the, I think, qualities of my spiritual life has just been utter determination to be more free and to use whatever life has presented me to help me to do that. And really using my teachers and really using whatever circumstances I was in, or really using my sadhana. And I think a secondary effect of that was like my determination to just be freer and to know what was happening here. If I had any worries about what anyone thought of me or whether I sounded stupid or whatever, it was just like, bowled over by that desire. That desire to be more free and to know more what was happening was just stronger than any insecurities I might have had or whatever. So I'd like to see people let more of that out. And I think people are also, I'm not saying everyone's like me, but I think people are afraid of their own desire. Some of you are afraid to be too unconventional. Some of you are afraid what it would mean for your career if you were too spiritual. All this stuff. I just want people to be more like, just be yourselves. Just stand up and be yourself. A little more courageous. Even if that means you're doing something completely conventional. If you call me up and say, look, I don't want to do any more practice. I just want to get married, buy a house, have a 9-to-5 job, raise some kids, and I'm just going to come to satsang every now and then. That's what I want. That's really great. I'm fine with that. But I'm also fine with when I know people have a big desire. I'm also fine with you getting together with that, getting married with that. right? Or if you have there's some people in the community who really are bhaktas and they just keep getting waylaid by things. Stuff like all kinds of concepts and stuff. So if you feel you're a bhakta and you have all that devotion, you should just do it. Just be it, fuck it, is what I say. So just more of that kind of attitude, like just the determination to be free and be yourself, no matter what it looks like. This tradition doesn't say anything has to look like anything. It doesn't say you have to have some particular form of life. Very often people come to me and say, I'm afraid of this and I'm afraid of that. And they've got some whole huge thing in their head about what they think expectations are here. And none of it is real. Just none of it is real. That's just like basically scaffolding that people put up around themselves when they're too afraid to just be themselves. I have this incredible desire to be free. That's what I want for everybody else. It's not like I want to be free and I want the rest of you to be sheep. I don't want that. I'd love to be in a community of really strong, out there people who are just doing whatever the heck they want to do. That would be dreamlike for me. Satsang with Shambhavi is produced by Jayakula, a nonprofit community offering opportunities to learn and practice in the direct realization traditions of Trika Shaivism and Dzogchen. If you enjoyed listening, please help us keep this podcast and many other teachings open to all by making a monthly or one-time donation. Visit jayakula.org to make a donation and explore more of our offerings.